Hi, I didn't hear your
Hello.
name or what you're reporting, sir. What are you reporting?
Okay, fire. Smoke's coming out, and there's a person laying down. Oh, my God, there's blood here.
Two brothers, best friends, business partners. They grew up in the same house. They raised their kids a few miles apart in one of the wealthiest counties in New Jersey. They worked together every day. And on the night of November 19th, 2018, one of them sat down, put pen to paper, and made a plan to murder the other.
Paul Caneiro has been found guilty of killing his brother Keith, Keith's wife Jennifer, and also their two young children.
The reason for such a heartless act? Greed, in an attempt to cover up a massive fraud payout.
Not just to kill his brother, to kill his brother's wife, to kill his 11-year-old nephew, to kill his 8-year-old niece, and then to burn the house down around them.
Who butchered his brother's entire family.
The 59-year-old also found guilty of setting their mansion on fire.
This is the Caneiro family murders. It is a story about what greed does to a person when it has nowhere left to go. It is a story about a man who had everything, a family, a business, a comfortable life, and who threw all of it into a fire, literally. This is what betrayal looks like when it has no bottom. Before we go any further, I want to plant one detail in your mind. On the evening of November 19th, 2018, the night before the murders, Keith Caneiro made 2 phone calls to his brother Paul. They were angry calls. Keith had discovered something specific. He said 4 words that have echoed through this case ever since. Paul, I need to know where the money went. Paul said very little in response. Remember those words. Remember that call. Because everything that happened in the next 8 hours started there. To understand how a man could do this to his own family, you need to understand who Paul and Keith Caneiro were, and crucially, who they were to each other. The Caneiro brothers grew up in a middle-class Italian-American family in New Jersey. Keith was the younger brother, driven, focused, the kind of man who built things. Paul was older, charming, sociable, the kind of man people trusted. For years, that dynamic worked. They went into business together. They built a life together. From the outside, the Caneiro family looked like a success story. Keith was the architect of their financial success. He owned 90% of Square One, Inc., a technology consulting firm based in Asbury Park. Paul owned the remaining 10%. They also co-owned EcoStar Pest Management as equal partners. Keith was the primary earner. He had built a life that reflected that, a sprawling mansion on several wooded acres in Colts Neck, one of New Jersey's most exclusive zip codes. His wife, Jennifer, 45, was warm and devoted. His son, Jesse, was 11. His daughter, Sophia, was 8. By any measure, they had everything. And then there was Paul. Paul's life, by contrast, was quietly unraveling. In 2012, Paul was involved in a car accident and went on disability. He was leasing 3 Porsches for his family. He had an apartment and a car, a $53,000 Audi Q5, for a woman who was not his wife. His personal bank balance was negative. Not overextended, negative. In 2017 and 2018, his personal expenses topped $700,000. His income could not come close to covering it. So he did what desperate people sometimes do.
Well, Julia, it's Cain and Abel. This is a brother who was clearly consumed with jealousy and greed.
He started taking money that wasn't his, from the business, from his brother, and eventually from his own niece and nephew's college fund, a trust he had been appointed to manage. Here's what makes this case different from most murder cases. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a sudden explosion of rage. What prosecutors laid out, in meticulous, agonizing detail, was a murder that was planned, calculated.
When you have the opportunity to hear from the testimony of the DNA experts in this case, you will understand why that matters so much in this case.
By a man who had been slowly building toward it for months. A man who knew exactly what he needed to do and who it was going to cost. Stay with me, because the 18 hours before the murders are unlike anything you'll hear in any other case. November 19th, 2018, the day before the murders. Keith Caneiro had been quietly auditing the family businesses and the trust accounts. What he found was devastating, and it was all traceable to his brother. Paul had been drawing money from a trust account set up specifically to fund Keith's life insurance premiums, then transferring it to his own personal accounts. He had missed 3 of the 4 required quarterly premium payments in 2018. He had diverted more than $78,000 from that trust. That evening, Keith made 2 furious phone calls to Paul. He confronted him directly about the missing premium payments. Paul reportedly said very little. What we know from testimony is that within hours of getting off those calls, Paul Caneiro began making preparations. Not to explain himself, not to apologize, not to return the money. He began making a plan, and just 18 hours later, his brother's entire family was dead.
Hello?
Hi, I didn't hear your
Hello.
name or what you're reporting, sir. What are you reporting?
Okay, fire.
Where?
Oh, my God, there's blood here.
And here is the detail that investigators would later describe as one of the most chilling things they'd ever seen in a crime scene. When Keith's mansion was eventually searched, detectives found that a chef's knife was missing from an 18-piece knife set in the kitchen. One knife, gone. The forensic evidence would eventually tell investigators exactly what that knife had been used for. We'll come back to it. Also found, in the months before the murders, Keith had begun taking concrete steps to end the business relationship with Paul. He was looking for outside employment. He had begun the process of removing Paul as a beneficiary from the family trust. He was preparing to cut off Paul's $250,000 annual salary. He had also emailed their younger brother Corey just 18 hours before the murders, saying, money was missing from the business, and he was prepared to take action. Paul was about to lose everything, legally, professionally, financially. He chose a different solution. What I'm about to describe is, by any measure, one of the most calculated and cold-blooded sequences of events in the recent history of New Jersey crime.
It's a corpse.
It's what?
It's dead.
What's dead?
Somebody is dead here.
Pay close attention to the timeline, because Paul Caneiro didn't just commit 4 murders. He also, simultaneously, constructed an alibi designed to make him look like a second victim. The plan was that intricate, and it almost worked. 1:29 a.m. Paul Caneiro walks up to the security surveillance system in the garage of his own home in Ocean Township. He turns it off. Prosecutors allege this was deliberate. He needed to leave his house in the middle of the night without being captured on his own cameras. His wife and daughters were asleep inside. He let them sleep. Sometime before dawn, Paul drove the 10 miles from Ocean Township to his brother's Colts Neck mansion. Prosecutors say he had also disabled Keith's home security system at some point. Keith's generator had also been tampered with, cutting the power. At 3:18 a.m., Keith Caneiro sent what would be his final text messages to Paul. He had woken up and noticed the power was out. He texted his brother to tell him about the generator failure. He went outside to check on it. He had no idea his brother was waiting for him in the dark. Keith Caneiro walked out onto his own lawn. He was shot 5 times. 4 times in the head, once in the back. The bullets came from Paul Caneiro's gun, a Sig Sauer, later found in a backpack in Paul's Porsche Cayenne. Prosecutors say Keith died on his own property, in the dark, not knowing why. Then Paul went inside. Jennifer Caneiro, 45, was shot in the head and repeatedly stabbed inside the home. Their son Jesse, 11 years old, 95 pounds, was stabbed 5 times. Forensic testimony described how Jesse had pressed his arm against his chest when the knife came through it. Their daughter Sophia, 8 years old, 45 pounds, was stabbed 17 times. The medical examiner testified that Sophia died trying to dodge the knife. Then Paul set the house on fire. Paul then drove back to Ocean Township. He called his wife to warn her there was going to be a fire. He set his own house ablaze, making sure she and his daughters got out first. He needed it to look like both brothers had been targeted. The fire at his house was reported at 5 a.m. Paul sat outside with his family as police and firefighters arrived. He was, according to witnesses and police testimony, very quiet. He did not say a lot. He did not cry. At 12:34 p.m. that same day, Colts Neck Police received the call. A structure fire at 15 Willowbrook Road. Keith's neighbor, a plastic surgeon named Boris Volstein, had initially thought Keith was burning leaves.
I called Jennifer and Keith. They did not pick up. I'm not sure if I called them first or texted them first.
When he couldn't reach anyone at the house, he called his landscaper. They found Keith on the lawn. Then they went inside. Paul Caneiro was arrested within 24 hours, charged first with arson at his own home. But investigators were already looking much closer. When police searched his 2016 Porsche Cayenne that same day, they found something extraordinary. A backpack in the car containing a laptop, his passport, a 9mm barrel of a Sig Sauer handgun, a silencer, and a FLIR night vision scope designed to attach to a firearm. A passport, a silencer, night vision equipment. Paul Caneiro, who had just reported a fire at his own home, was carrying what prosecutors described as a murder kit and a getaway bag. The ballistics evidence was airtight. Bullets recovered from the crime scene in Colts Neck matched Paul Caneiro's weapon. Blood evidence inside the house was consistent with multiple victims moving through the kitchen. The security camera still image, fought all the way to the New Jersey Supreme Court before being admitted, showed Paul turning off his own cameras at 1:29 a.m., hours before the fires erupted. Investigators also found a financial paper trail that was, in the words of one analyst, almost operatic in its scale. Paul had been stealing $11,000 per month from the business, claiming it as insurance reimbursement. He had drained $78,000 from Keith's life insurance trust. He had been collecting disability insurance since 2012 while secretly still working. And, while awaiting trial in jail, investigators discovered he had also stolen $90,000 from the college fund he'd been appointed to manage for Jesse and Sophia, the children he had just murdered. Paul Caneiro pleaded not guilty. He maintained his innocence through 7 years of legal proceedings. His defense pointed the finger at the third Caneiro brother, Corey, who also stood to benefit from Keith's life insurance. They argued police had fixated on Paul without fully investigating alternatives. For 7 years, this case sat, not going to trial, buried in motions and delays.
Paul Caneiro has maintained his innocence, his attorney trying to put the blame on a third brother.
7 years. While Keith, Jennifer, Jesse, and Sophia waited. Before we get into the trial, if this case has your attention, I want to ask for 10 seconds of yours. This channel is dedicated to cases exactly like this one. Cases where the full story is deeper, darker, and more complicated than anything you'll see in a headline. If you're watching, subscribing genuinely helps get this content in front of more people who care about it. Now, back to New Jersey. Because while Paul sat in and out of court for 7 years, his victims' families were living something almost impossible to describe. Jennifer Caneiro's family, led by her sister Bonnie Caritas, fought relentlessly in the civil courts while the criminal case languished. In 2021, they filed a wrongful death lawsuit detailing the full scope of Paul's financial crimes.
Murdering his own brother, my daughter, my grandchildren, Jesse and Sophia.
For the families of Jesse and Sophia, every delay meant another year without justice for 2 children who had been 8 and 11 years old when they died. Here is the question that this case forces you to confront. We talk about murder cases in terms of motive, money, jealousy, rage. But Paul Caneiro's motive was, in the end, almost banal. He was broke. He was caught. He was going to lose a salary. And rather than face that, rather than have a conversation with his brother or file for bankruptcy, he chose to erase an entire family. A father, a mother, 2 children. The real question this case asks is not, why did Paul do it? The answer to that is depressingly simple. The real question is, what kind of man looks at his 8-year-old niece, a child he had held at her birth, watched grow up, called his own, and does what he did? That question has no comfortable answer. January 12, 2026. Paul Caneiro's trial finally began in Monmouth County Superior Court before Judge Mark Lemieux. The gallery was packed. Jennifer's family was there. The victim's friends were there. On the first day, Assistant Prosecutor Nicole Wallace laid out the prosecution's case with a single, devastating sentence. He stabbed his niece Sophia 17 times over her entire 45-pound body.
He stabbed his nephew Jesse multiple times in his upper body and threw his arm into his chest.
She described how Paul had cut the power to the mansion, disabled the generator, and waited in the shadows of the property he had visited dozens of times for Keith to come outside.
And then he cut the power to the house from the outside. He waited for his brother Keith to come outside. The defendant pointed that loaded handgun at his brother, and he pulled the trigger 6 times.
The evidence presented over 2 months was, by any account, overwhelming. Ballistics experts confirmed the bullets came from Paul's gun. Blood evidence, the security camera still image, financial records showing the theft in clinical, documented detail. Then came a moment that stopped the courtroom. Paul's own daughter Katie took the stand for the defense. She testified about cherished family memories, about losing her uncle, aunt, and cousins. She described loving them.
So I wanted to make sure they were okay. And the first question they asked me was if I knew who was shot outside of my uncle's house. I started screaming and crying.
She was testifying on behalf of the man who had killed them. Remember the missing knife from the 18-piece kitchen set? Here's where it comes back. Forensic testimony confirmed that Jennifer Caneiro and both children were killed with a knife consistent with what was absent from that set, a large chef's knife from Keith's own kitchen. Paul Caneiro hadn't brought a bladed weapon from home. He had walked into his brother's house, opened a kitchen drawer, taken a knife from the block, and used it on the people sleeping upstairs. The evidence of premeditation doesn't get more chilling than that. On February 13, 2026, after deliberating for roughly 4 hours, the jury returned a verdict on all 15 counts. Guilty. Every single one.
How do you find as to count 6 of the indictment, charging the defendant Paul Caneiro with the felony murder of Sophia Caneiro?
Guilty.
How do you find as to count 7 of the indictment charging the defendant, Paul Caneiro, with aggravated arson as to the structure of 15 Willowbrook Road, Colts Neck?
Guilty.
Paul Caneiro sat motionless as the foreman read each charge. His wife and daughters, who had been with him throughout the trial, were not present for the verdict. Guilty on all 15 counts. What a judge says to a man who did what Paul Caneiro did carries weight that goes beyond the law. It speaks to something that the law alone can't fully address. Because what Judge Lemieux said in that courtroom deserves to be heard. May 19th, 2026, Monmouth County Superior Court. Judge Mark Lemieux took the bench. In the gallery, Jennifer Caneiro's sister, Bonnie Caritas, Keith's friends and colleagues, the families of all 4 victims. Paul Caneiro stood at the defense table, stone-faced, showing no emotion. He declined to address the court. He had nothing to say. Bonnie Caritas, Jennifer's sister, addressed the court. An entire branch of our family was erased 7.5 years ago, she said.
Keith included and supported his older brother Paul, but Paul became consumed by jealousy.
Judge Lemieux sentenced Paul Caneiro to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. 1 for Keith, 1 for Jennifer, 1 for Jesse, 1 for Sophia. He also received 8 additional years on each arson and theft charge to run concurrently. He will never leave prison. Judge Lemieux noted Paul's complete lack of remorse. Then he said something that has stayed with everyone who heard it. He said, "His address will forever be the Department of Corrections. His only reality is confinement, consequence, and accountability." Paul Caneiro has 45 days to appeal the sentence. The victims' families, having waited 7.5 years for this day, but for now, Paul Caneiro's address is, as the judge said, the Department of Corrections. At the very beginning of this video, I asked you to remember 4 words. Paul, I need to know where the money went. That was Keith Caneiro calling his brother on the evening of November 19th, 2018, giving him the chance to explain, to confess, to return the money, to do any of the 100 things a normal person in that situation would do. Paul said very little, and then, 8 hours later, he drove 10 miles in the dark with a gun, a silencer, and night vision equipment, and he made sure Keith would never ask that question again. On October 15th, 2018, just weeks before the murders, Keith Caneiro had sent an email to a friend. In it, he described his plans for the future. He talked about expanding the business. He talked about Jesse starting middle school. Jesse Caneiro would have been 18 years old this year. Sophia Caneiro would have been 15. Jennifer Caneiro would have been 52. Keith Caneiro would have been 57, likely still running the business, probably watching his kids graduate. Instead, an entire family, an entire future was ended in the early hours of a November morning. Paul Caneiro will spend the rest of his life inside a New Jersey correctional facility for 4 consecutive life sentences, convicted on all 15 counts with no possibility of parole. He has filed an intention to appeal. He has never apologized. He has never explained. He has shown no remorse. In a case full of extraordinary details, the surveillance cameras, the backpack in the Porsche, the missing knife, the most extraordinary detail of all is the simplest. He had everything he needed: a family, a business, a life, and he chose to burn it down. If you believe cases like this deserve serious, sustained coverage, share this video, subscribe to this channel, and if you have time, look up Sophia Caneiro's name. She was 8 years old, 45 pounds. She deserves to be remembered as more than a number in a criminal indictment. Her name is Sophia. She loved soccer. She had a best friend named Ripley. And Ripley has been waiting since 3rd grade to see justice done. On May 19th, 2026, she finally got it.